Thank you for tuning in to Eddie Paul's Tool Talk. We came up with this idea of doing a tool show to inform the uninformed about tools. I've been working with tools my whole life. My background is film, as a lot of you may know. I did cars for shows like Grease. We did all the cars, 48 cars in a couple of weeks, all the way up to Fast and Furious, XXX, Taxi, Pixar cars, plus a lot of sharks and different things for other films. So I've got a lot of experience with tools, and I'd like to pass as much of that on as possible because today's generation doesn't know a lot. Today's subject is going to be a focus on diversity, which is kind of an odd subject. A lot of people focus on a product or a project or an invention or whatever it is, and they stay so focused. We have customers like that. You can't talk to them about anything except their product. That's all they talk about. It's all they think about. They live it, breathe it, dream about it. I'm a little bit different, and I don't know if it's better or worse. Some of those people that focus, I envy them. The people that focus envy me because I'm not so focused on one particular project. I've grown up to do multiple things, multitasking in the real world, and I take every project that I can, that I think I can build, and I'll tackle it all about the same way. There's a diverse thought process where you take things and just separate them. There's a convergence where you bring them all back together, and usually people will look at something somewhat open-mindedly and then focus in on the problem and fix it and not look at anything else. They don't go back to divergent thinking again. I go back and forth. I'll look at a project, I'll start building it. If I run into a roadblock, sometimes I jump totally off that project onto something else because you can't shut your mind off. You're still thinking about what you're working on the side. And then if I get an idea, I jump back on that. I think it drives my employees nuts because I'll be right in the middle of something and I'll say, wait a minute, I got an idea, and I'll run over and start working on another project. Then I'll come back, and you still get the same amount of stuff done. It's just you're working on 10 projects at once instead of one. A lot of my guys, I have to give them one project, not even ask them questions because it'll throw them out of focus. They can't get the job done. When I first started my business, I was constantly criticized by people for being non-focused. A lot of them called it scattered. I'd take on almost any job I thought I could do and just, yeah, sure, put it in the back. I'll get on it as soon as I can. And that drives a lot of people nuts. They go, you're taking on too much. You can't do this. You can't do that. You kind of find out you can if you focus on it and do a little bit of research. You can do almost anything. If it's all in the, like my area is mechanical. In the mechanical area, I can build almost anything. Electronics, I don't touch because I don't know that much about them. I don't get into computers much, more than I have to. So I focus in one area, but I diverge in that area into different types of machines. After all, anyone could focus in on one thing and just, get it done. But to broaden your mind, broaden your horizons, I like to call it thinking big. My shop runs a gamut of products. We turn out things for Hollywood like cars. We, of course, most of you know, we built all the cars for Fast and Furious, built the cars for Grease. At a time we could be doing up to 5 different movies at one time. And that, of course, would drive people nuts because how do you keep track of the movies? To be honest, sometimes we didn't. We actually delivered the wrong cars for the wrong show one time. And after a couple of days, it got straightened out and everybody was happy. But you do get a little overwhelmed at times. We've had times where we're building cars. Well, again, for the Fast and Furious, we were building cars for that at the same time. In the other part of our shop, we're building a 14-foot great white mechanical shark to be piloted by Fabien Cousteau, who's the grandson of Jacques Cousteau. So his life was dependent on the shark working correctly. The cars, the stuntman's life, were dependent on that. So we had to make sure they were all done right, done perfect, but done at the same time. I've also done stuff like Sentosa in Singapore called for me to build an underwater aquarium, a shark tube to go inside of a shark aquarium. And we had to build that. It took a year and a half to do the paperwork. Once the paperwork was done, we only had 2 weeks to build this thing. This is a massive amount of work. It's a big stainless steel rig that we had to build in our shop upside down and backwards because we didn't have room to put it right side up. We had to build it upside down backwards. Then we had to take it all apart, put it inside of crates, had to design the crates, put it on a truck with a forklift that wouldn't lift the weight. So we had to lift one half at a time, prop it up, lift the other half, slide it forward. Had to be thinking about all this stuff while we're working on it, then ship it to Singapore by plane. And then my wife and I had to fly over there and show them how to assemble it, make sure it worked perfect, and know all the clearances, how they were going to move it from the truck into the area they needed it to go. So that depended on what size we had to make it. Then we had to get it a way to put it into the water with their existing crane, which didn't even go over the water like it was supposed to. It went off to the side. So we had to make another rig that would move it out at the proper time to lower it into the water. So it was a really, really complex job to do. And like I say, only 2 weeks to do it, and it was not really enough time. All these projects were completed at our shop a lot of times, like I say, at the same time. So you really have to organize. You have to think things through. How many people, like they say, have built a boat inside of a workshop and then couldn't get it out? When I was younger, I built a motorcycle, but I had it planned that I had to take the door jambs off the one door and I could take it out the door. Otherwise, it wouldn't have fit. I'd have to disassemble it again. So you have to think all the way through the project, from the time you start the project to how it's going to be delivered, if it'll go out your door, if it's too tall. We had another show once we did called Ice Pirates, where we built a 60-foot-long battlecraft in a 65-foot-long shop, and the doorway was 20 foot tall. The battlecraft was 20 foot 3 inches. So, of course, we let the air out of the tires to move it in and out of the shop. But again, we had to take it outside, know what type of truck it went on, had to plan that all out so that it could come apart easily, go on the truck and ship it down to location and reassemble it out in the desert with almost no tools. So again, when you're working on one thing, you'd be thinking of something else. If you don't, if you're too focused, it'll come back to bite you. You know, when it gets down to the finish point, I do focus on them to the point that, you know, is this going to work? I look at a project too as not, this is the greatest thing I've ever built. I look at it as, what's wrong with it? There's something wrong. There's something I'm missing. There's something that's going to go wrong. What would happen if this does this does that? So it's kind of a negative thinking, but I'm looking for the problem because there's almost always a problem. And if you spot it before it's finished, then you got a successful product. I do this on almost every project we look at. I once invented a pump and patented it, so I had to learn the whole patent process. I got books on it, because you can get books on any subject. I got books on it, learned how to write up a patent, how to do the drawings. There's certain formats to do that. I contacted a patent attorney, got him involved, but I did as much of it as I could. I did all the marketing, learned how to do press releases. I started to prototype in my garage. I didn't have enough equipment, so I went out to local machine shops. And a lot of the shops that I went to, it was really weird. It's like I go in and I say, here's an invention I have. I want to build this. As an example, seconds, this is something I had in the patent process for over a year. So I knew the pump pretty good because I invented it. And I could walk in within minutes. They say, well, why don't we change it to this? Why don't we make the pistons longer? Why don't we change instead of round, why don't we make it square? And I try to be polite and I say, look, you know, I appreciate your input, but this is my invention. This is the way I want it built. And a lot of them would just look at it and say, it's not going to work. I go, I don't care if you think it's not going to work. I just want you to machine this part. So I found out you can't take the whole invention to one person. So I took it apart, and I took it to 4 or 5 shops. So they didn't even know what they were building. And that seemed to help. They were still trying to redesign, saying, well, you know, you say you want stainless here, but why don't we make it out of aluminum? It's cheaper. I go, I realize aluminum's cheaper, but I want it made out of stainless. And I didn't even explain why. I just said, that's what I want. Anyway, that became such a pain. We went around for almost a month trying to find someone to build the pump or the components to the pump. Finally, we found a shop that was really close to going out of business. My wife and I came up with this idea and said, well, he's going out of business. If we go in there, he'll focus on our project. He won't be as argumentative because he needs the money. And it didn't take us long to realize that we were almost his only customer. So a little while later, we decided, well, if we're going to manufacture these, we need a shop. So we turned that into an opportunity and said, why don't we buy your equipment? You're in debt. We'll pay off your debt over time, and we'll take over your business. You could retire. And it worked out for him. It worked out for us. We wound up taking the shop and some of his customers, which was aerospace at the time. We'd never done anything in aerospace, so I read up on it, studied a bit, found out the tolerances they need. We even took some of the employees, which I later found out is a mistake. Took over the employees, and we started building up his aerospace business as we're building the pumps on the side in the shop. So the aerospace business, we built it up to the point that it was doing pretty well. We had gotten a lot of customers. We were dealing with Boeing. We were dealing with Kaiser, Electro Precision. We widened the base. We were bringing in a lot more aerospace work than he had because I was using Studio Logic along with the machining, where in aerospace, somebody gives you a drawing and says, okay, I need this in 6 months. With us in studio work, somebody gives you a drawing, they say, I need this in 2 weeks. So we use that, and we jump on a project, we'd go gun-ho, we'd get it finished quick, we'd hand it back to them, and we picked up more customers. We could still do the precision they wanted, but we just would focus in on that, but diversify on the number of jobs we took and the type of stuff. So we had aerospace in one part of our shop, then we had some studio work on the other side, then we had a section where we were doing the pumps. Used all of his existing tooling, so when we bought the shop, we got all the tooling with it, and the employees. We slowly replaced the employees with people that were a little more loyal. It wound up, he had trained his employees to work slow and to kind of goof off. So they were like, they'd work an hour and then they'd take an hour break, it seemed like, and then They wouldn't get started because they'd have to use the bathroom after they clocked in. It was horrible. So we finally, one by one, gave them an opportunity to change or leave, and I think most of them left. I think we kept one out of about 20. So we learned a lot of lessons on that, and then started putting more and more effort into the aerospace and didn't realize that the business was changing. Because, of course, they don't tell you anything until one day you just stopped getting orders, and they were picking up parts, and we weren't getting new jobs as they were picking up parts. So we thought it was us. So we started concentrating more on the quality, building up the quality to the point that we were holding half thousandths tolerance, which is pretty good for some of the work. And one day we just got notified that a lot of the companies just went out of business. Aerospace just turned. Everybody's out of business. And at that point, it was almost, it was pretty scary because, we're cranking out work like crazy, working 7 days a week, 20 hours a day. Then the next day, nothing. We had a lot of shops in our town, El Segundo. I think we had 64 different machine shops. Almost overnight, it turned down to, maybe 5 machine shops. Right now, I think there's 2. So the whole business just left town. Fortunately, because of being diversified, I started making phone calls to the studio and said, look, I know we weren't calling you a lot to do stuff because we were busy with other things, but right now we're freed up. If you have any work you want to send us, send it our way. And I made about 20, 30 calls and got 4 or 5 jobs out of it, and they're pretty good-sized jobs. And word got out that we're available again. We started getting all kinds of movie work, doing commercials. We landed a little submarine we had to build for a commercial, building a car into a submarine for American Express commercial. That went on quite a while. Then we had our pumps started taking off. We started selling to the fire departments, and we started manufacturing pumps like crazy. So overnight, as all the other machine shop owners were at the bars, kind of crying in their beer, trying to figure out what they're going to do in their retirement, we were cranking out business, getting it back up to speed, and just by being diversified. The other thing I found, too, I used to have a secretary that answered the phone, and every once in a while I'd hear her answer the phone and say, no, I'm sorry, we don't do that, and hang up. And she did this a number of times. I go up and I said, well, what was that about? And she goes, oh, they ask if we do this or we do that. And I said, no. I go, well, we could do that. What was that? And she'd tell me what the job was. And I go, you might have just hung up on a future customer. So I started answering the phones, which everybody said, you're the owner, you can't answer the phones. So my wife or I started answering the phone. And a lot of times somebody calls something weird and say, I need a gadget designed. And where she would have hung up on them, I go, well, what kind of gadget is it? And they tell me, and a lot of times it would fall in line with what we do. I go, that's not a problem. Why don't you come down and talk to us? So they'd show up. And I got a lot of jobs out of that, jobs that we wouldn't have gotten otherwise. We had one customer called about electric wind turbine, and that's something she definitely would have hung up on. I talked to the company, and we wound up about 2 years' worth of work out of them, made quite a bit of money off making wind turbines that turned alternator, and we redesigned them for them. We did pretty well on that. So a lot of times, as they call them, throwaway jobs can turn into something quite well. I also listen to every customer. A lot of people, they judge you. You walk in, you have no shoes on or ragged pants or something. They assume you don't have anything. A lot of times they don't worry about how they dress. Our richest customers come in with holes in their pants or old tennis shoes or something like that. The ones that come in the suits are the ones that worry me because they're trying to impress you. The ones that don't care about impressing you are the best customers. So I take everybody serious unless they prove otherwise. We had a guy that came in that was, God, I don't know what I can say here without getting in trouble, but he was kind of edgy, to say the least. And he was asking us to do kind of an edgy project, and I just didn't feel good about it. I had a feeling in my gut, don't do it. So I turned him down. Anyway, I found out later that was a good move. He was edgy. He eventually got arrested. I think he's still in jail over it. So you got to also trust your gut, which people nowadays, don't judge anybody by their appearance. If you see a big mugger coming down the street with a club in his hand, don't worry, he's not going to hurt you, and then he knocks your brains out. You got to use common sense. So that's another thing I've learned is kind of follow the gut. If you don't feel good about it, if it doesn't fit in line with what you do or can do, then just turn it down, but do it nicely. Leave the door open because he may actually be a good customer and just left a bad impression. And I've had a couple of those that'll come back, apologize, say, look, I was having a bad day when I called you, but here's the deal. And then we'd wind up working for him. In fact, we had one customer that I absolutely hated the guy. I didn't like talking to him on the phone. I didn't want to see him. He'd come in the shop. I'd go to the other end. Wound up years later becoming almost best friends with him. He just had a weird personality. And it was like his humor was insulting. until you realize that was his form of humor. And I just dish it back to him. He'd insult me, I'd insult him back. We'd both laugh and go on. So you kind of you're working with a diverse group of people. So you have to figure out what their personalities are and deal with that person with their personality. We've got a few different jobs we're doing a lot of stuff overseas. We do car shows, different things. The main focus of the show, of course, is tools, and that is the way we do this stuff. People walk into a shop, and if you walk into a shop that say it's empty, and I've done that, you walk in, the guys say we're going to have upholstery done, and we walk in, we see one table with a piece of upholstery on it and a sewing machine, and nobody at the machine. You look around and there's nothing else there. You think, this guy could pack up and move out of town like overnight. I'd never get my stuff done after giving a deposit. So what we've done is we've invested most of our stuff in tools so we could do this kind of stuff. You walk in our shop and it's hard to get through it because we have so many tools. We have vacuum forming machines, we have mills, all this stuff we bought over time with jobs. So if a job comes in with something that we can't do or don't think we can do because we don't have the equipment, most of the time I price out the equipment, find out that, even a vacuum forming machine, as an example, we had a job that came in to do a car for a movie and they were going to crash a lot and they needed replacement parts real quick and they needed them cheap. So I came up with the idea of vacuum forming the fenders and parts and hoods out of plastic, which is a cheap material. You can vacuum form it within minutes, put it on the car and you've got it. I didn't have big vacuum forming machines, so I negotiated with the studios and I said, this is what it's going to cost because I've got to buy a machine. Even buying the machine and making some profit on it, making all the tooling and all this stuff, I still came in under our competitor. So we got the job. So I immediately ran out, grabbed a vacuum forming machine, put it in the shop, and this is no small machine. This thing's a couple thousand pounds, about 10 foot by 10 foot. We had to wire it into 220 or 440, I think, on this one. Hook it all up, learn how to use it overnight, and started making the parts. We still came in under budget and lower price than the other competition. And we were cranking parts out. We're doing like 20, 30 fenders a day, way faster than if we would have done it out of fiberglass. So again, that's how I acquire my tools. I don't just, run up a big bank account, put it all on credit, and then have this big debt out there or start making payments. In fact, none of our tools, we don't owe money on any of our tools. Everything's paid off. If you buy the tool, pay cash, however you can do it, pay it off so you don't have that looming debt out there on the horizon. And that's one of the things that's helped us a lot because at any point, if things went really, really bad, I could sell tools or equipment or machinery and get back in shape and then go buy more equipment, get newer equipment if I wanted to. And in some cases, I've actually been offered more for my equipment than I paid for it because some of the stuff isn't being made anymore. People see how we use it and they want to buy that because they figure some reason our machine will work better than a brand new one because we fine-tuned it. So anyway, that's a few little hints and things on diversification and how you can diversify and focus at the same time. Most of the kind of stuff we do down here is prototyping now. We get somebody will literally come in with an idea or scratch on a napkin and say, here's my idea. What can we do with this? I have one, some of the stuff I can't talk about, I'm sorry, because we're still working on it and they haven't filed patents on it, but I'll kind of make up one. We had there's one I can talk about. There's a company came in, wanted to advertise one time. It was a beer company, and they wanted to take the show on the road and advertise this new beer they came out with. The company was Deschutes Brewery out of Bend, Oregon. And they said, what can we do? And they contacted a local artist at the studios. And as a friend of mine, he came up with some sketches, said, here's an idea I have. It's a beer barrel. I'm going to make a giant beer barrel. And then they put the beer in it. It'll be a rolling bar. It holds the kegs of beer in front. And then in the back, it has, the bar with, I think it was 16 tappers. And it sounded like a neat idea. And then he gave me a sketch of it. And I looked on the sketch. And I go, wait a minute. This beer barrel is not a beer barrel. This is a weird beer barrel. It was like 20 feet long. I think it was 8 feet wide and 12 foot tall. So it was kind of squished. So there wasn't a single piece of wood on it. And they wanted it made out of oak. There wasn't a single piece of wood on it that was symmetrical or the same, except from front to back. So we had to do this weird shaped beer barrel with, we used basically a plasma cutter. We didn't even have a big plasma cutter. So we used a 4 foot by 4 foot CNC table to make a 20 foot beer barrel. So we had to segment it into little sections so we could weld them together. And we had little kind of, the joints were made like a puzzle where they snapped together. Then we'd weld them so we knew they were in perfect alignment. So we built the frame out of steel. It was a pretty pretty strange looking frame when we were done, but it looked like a beer barrel. Then we made these oak planks that we would attach to it and had to design the attachment points so you could put each piece on and snap it off. You had to do anything with it. Then we had to seal it all. We had to put, and they came up with a generator. They wanted a self-powered generator, so we put a generator in the back, a little Honda generator. We put the tappers in. We put the air conditioner in the front to keep the beer cold. Built a compartment for that. It was on a double axle trailer. And they went out on the road and had sides of the thing would open up the door so it would look like a bar. We finished that, again, while we were doing, I think we were doing a shark movie at the time. So we had 20, 30 sharks in the shop, mechanical sharks, a beer barrel, and I think we also had the Pixar cars in there we were building. So we were jumping from one thing to another. So my guys got used to, working on a Porsche 1 minute, and a minute later working in wood on this beer barrel, and then jumping over and working on sharks and skin flex and latex. And so we were all over the place, but we had a large shop and the guys are used to it. And it's kind of fun because you start to get bored on something, or if you hit a stump, like I say, you jump on something else, think about it, you have the answer to it, you go back and work on that. So it breaks up the day, it keeps it fun. Any one of those jobs, somebody called and said, do you build sharks? My secretary would have said, no, we build custom cars for movies only. So again, taking over the phones really helped me a lot because I had some skin in the game. She did not. She was getting paid by the hour. So it didn't matter what she did. If she took a customer, sent them away. Not a bit of difference to her. So anyway, we've always not always. I started out not doing that, and then we learned to do that. So now I try to answer every phone. I try to talk to every single person. Every email I respond to, somebody sends me a question, and we get a lot of those. A lot of them are just crank emails. We get criticism from people. We get suggestions. We have inventors saying, here, want to give me some money so I can do a patent. And we get the whole gamut of stuff. We still go through every single one and say, this is real, this is not real. I try to answer even the nutcases. I try to answer and try to be nice to them and encourage them on. Because you don't want to make enemies either. You don't want people, you make somebody mad and they'll just terrorize you. So we've learned to be nice to everybody, avoid the ones that are really strange, and work with the ones that are normal. We have a lot of friends that we've had people come together in the shop here. We have little parties once in a while. And the assortment of people we have, we'll have bikers and policemen and studio people and just a whole diverse group of people. But they all have something in common. The ones we work with are generally, I'd say almost always honest. They say what they're going to do. They do it. They're dependable. You can almost keep time by them. They say they're going to be here at 10 o'clock. They're here at 10. So we've learned to get a group of people together that we like working with. And a lot of these people we hire, we bring them in when things get really busy. Have them work part-time. We have a cop that works for us part-time when he's off work at the police station or wherever he works. He comes over here and helps us build sharks and do different things. So we keep our door open to any suggestion. In fact, we have a guy coming in from Germany that I met when I was over in Essen who's coming over on a work visa. So he'll be here to help us wire up this Duesenberg when we get ready to do it. So again, you can't focus. You can't diverge too much. You have to just do just enough of each one, and you pull it together. We've found the downside of diversification is that you get too scattered, you take on too much, and of course you overload yourself. So again, you have to know how much to take on if you have enough people for it. I also don't take on a project if I don't think I have enough people to do it, or if we're overloaded. And I don't turn it down. I just tell them, look, this is the way it is. I'm busy. I want to pay attention to your project. Bring it in next month or call me next month. If it's a big enough job and it's and I think you're the one to do it, they will wait in most cases. I also have gotten away from this deadline that studios give us, like I want it in 24 hours, I want it in 3 days. If they do that, I just tell them go somewhere else. I used to do that. I just don't want to do it anymore. It's not worth it. I want to turn out a quality product. And usually the longer it takes, the cheaper it is. The faster they want it, I double, triple, quadruple our price. And I tell them that. I say, you want it tomorrow, it's going to cost you $10,000. You want it in a week, it's going to cost you $2,000. You decide. And then if they want it tomorrow, I'll bring in 20 people to jump on it and get it done. So you kind of find little solutions to these problems that creep along in business. And again, don't turn down anything that you think you can do, and you can do almost anything. I mean, all the stuff that we do here, people say, well, you went to school and learned this. I never graduated high school. I learned all this on my own from books, from watching people. I'm still go over to shops and go on the internet and stuff and look at the way people do things. If we need I can't think of an example, but I also keep my mind open to things. We get emails sometimes, people selling products, and most of them I've seen or they're junk or something. We had a call the other day for a thing called Multiplans. I didn't even know what that was, and I'm finding out that it's a little machine, which I'll be talking about soon. I'll have them on the show. It's a small machine that does plasma cutting and plasma welding. To be honest, I didn't even know what plasma welding was. And I started looking at these videos, and if it's what I think it is, it's kind of a neat little tool. It's one tool you can change guns from plasma cutting to plasma welding. I'm more interested in the plasma welding part of it because they say it'll weld as good as TIG, but it's like MIG. It uses water and alcohol to make the inert gas, to around the weld area, and you still use a stick of a rod to put the molten metal into the weld. So it sounds interesting. It's supposed to be pretty easy to learn. And I think it's about a 2-year-old company, so we'll be talking to them soon. And again, just keep your mind open, stay focused, but unfocused at the same time, if you can do that. So I want to thank you. I want to thank SolarRez for sponsoring us. I want to thank TrueLine Wheel Alignment System. I want to thank Radioactive Broadcasting for having me on the show. And I guess we're working on another show, too, coming up, the Build It Better show on home repair. And we're doing one, I think, for the military channel. I'm not sure who it's for exactly yet. It might be Wounded Warriors, but we'll find out, and that'll be coming along soon. And I appreciate you coming to the auto show if you made it out there, the LA Auto Show, which I think is still going on. And we'll be seeing you out there. So, again, thanks again. This is Eddie Paul, Eddie Paul's Tool Talk, and we'll talk to you later. Hi, this is Eddie Paul. This is for the Build It Better show that we're starting, and this show is going to be about building things, repairing things at your home. It's more home-based than it is automotive-based. A lot of my background is automotive, but I also have a house that I built many years ago, and I've done remodels on it over the years. I've added on. When I bought the house, it was 820 square feet, so it was a pretty small house. Right now, I think it's 4,000. It's got a complete wood shop in back, a metal shop down below, and I think it's 5 bathrooms. It's almost like the Winchester house. But I built it, 35 years ago, and most of the stuff is starting to break down. The pipes are starting to clog. The electrical is starting to go out. We have termites. They're starting to take over the house. And so it's time for remodel. So I thought I'd go through some different things. We start out, it's funny how these projects start. If you have a leaky faucet and you decide, I'm going to fix that faucet, I'm going to change it. Okay, as soon as you start to take the faucet loose, the pipe behind it tends to break. Then you go, okay, I'm going to replace that pipe. That pipe goes to the next pipe, which breaks. Next thing, you're cutting out the drywall, you're moving the cabinet, you're going, okay, I'm just going to replace this whole pipe. That's it. That's all I'm going to do. You pull out the pipe and you go, oh my God, I have termites. Better do some wood repair. Then you got to tear out the drywall and you go, oh, look at all this wood that's rotted from dry rot or termites. I'm just going to replace my floor joist, and that's it. Then I'm going to fix the faucet, put the new faucet on, and that's it. So you start tearing out your floor joist, and you go, oh my God, my concrete is crumbling. I got to replace this part of the footing. It tends to go on that way. We've been doing a small repair where our faucet, literally, the hot water was barely coming out of the faucet. So I changed faucets, same problem. A couple $100 faucets. After 2 of them, you go, wait, this is a bigger problem than just faucets. I did all the tests you're supposed to do, pressure tests. We had plenty of water pressure. So I tore into the wall and then followed it to the water heater, found out the water heater pipe was clogged. Also found out the drain was clogged up almost solid, and we've always had a problem with that. So I tore the drain out. Then I saw the gas pipe was leaking. You can find that by putting soapy water and see if you see bubbles. So I did that to every joint and found all kinds of leaks. So I tore out the galvanized pipe and went to a new plastic pipe. And I thought, well, since I'm doing this, I'm going to go ahead and replace the floor joist, the support beams, and I noticed that the floor was sagging in one area. So I put some hydraulic jacks under it, jacked the floor up, got it level, put new 3/4 plywood, and started putting down the flooring. And we used that new bamboo flooring that you have to nail down. So, of course, I didn't have a nail gun for that, so I went out and bought a nail gun. The neat thing about this is you get all these cool tools when you start doing home repair, and your wife can't say a thing about it because she loves the work. So I got all these new tools. We got almost a new house now. Decided to put an island, decided to take out a wall, had to reinforce the roof. I mean, this project is 3 months of every single night working on it. Then I called around a couple of friends to see if they'd help me lift an appliance to put it in the wall, and they go, well, I'm busy working on my house. Then I realized both the neighbors on both sides of my house are doing the same thing. They're doing remodels. So you start finding out there's a lot of people do their own home remodeling now. We used to just call a contractor to get it done. So the focus of this show is going to be things you can do, things you can do, yourself without having to call a contractor, how much money you save. We have a guy who's doing the identical thing we're doing to our house. I mean, almost the same wood, same everything. And he just told us he spent $180,000, but he didn't do any of the plumbing, any of the electrical. This is just cosmetic. We think we've got less than 30 into ours right now. So there's the cost saving. That's including the tools they had to buy. So it's definitely worth thinking about. It's not that hard. I'm teaching my son-in-law how to do it. He had never done any kind of woodwork before in his life. His dad was not, the type of person who does anything. I mean, he does something, but he doesn't do construction work, or woodwork. So he's learned it all from me. And I showed him how to do a floor in their house. We put a floor down there. Second floor was better. The third floor was better. He helped me do this floor, and it looks like a professional did it. And then we went down to pick up the wood, and just out of curiosity, he said, "What do you guys charge us to lay this floor?" And they go, $2,500. It'll take us a couple days. Bryce and I went to the house and did it in one day. So that was $2,500 savings just on the one floor. So like I say, it can be profitable. It's fun. It's neat to know how to do this stuff. Once you do it, you know what's in there. You can make the decisions. Well, I want to replace this board. I don't want to replace it. You don't have some guy coming up to you. Well, if you want this board replaced, it's going to cost you an extra $300. You have to negotiate every deal. Plus all the contracts you have to deal with isn't worth it. So tune in. If you have questions, send them to us, and we will try to address each one of the issues. Like I say, most of this stuff you can do yourself. You do it safely, you pay attention. It's not that hard. A lot of books on the subject, but there's nothing like hearing it firsthand. And I'll bring a couple people in. I'll bring in Bryce. I'll bring in Leslie. I think she's doing her own stuff. The lady that owns Truline. She's doing a lot of the home remodeling in her house, refinishing cabinets. There's all kinds of things you can do to save money. So again, stay tuned for Eddie Paul's Tool Talk and the Build It Better show with Eddie Paul, which is what I'm talking about now. So talk to you next week.